It's Todd with Kudas Industries. Today we're going to talk about a pump replacement for a swimming pool. On this particular pool we have two pumps down here. One's the main pump that goes to your filter and your jets, which is this guy, and then a secondary pump here which goes to a sliding board and a water feature. So this pump here has a direct short in it, and I know it has a direct short because it keeps tripping the breaker in here. So as you see, as I turn this pump on, as soon as I turn it on, it immediately trips the breaker, which tells me there's a direct short in this motor. So what we're going to do is replace this pump today. Make sure our water supply is off. Now you see these are Jandy valves. There's two. They actually look like the handle's in the same position, but because of the orientation of the valve and the pipe, this is open and this one's closed. So you want to go in the orientation of the pipe. This is off. Now in a typical ball valve, the handle is in the direction of flow. So this would be on. However, these are a little bit different. So the off is here. You want the off to be in line with the pipe. In this position, that is actually on. So a little contrary to a typical ball valve. So we'll shut this. So we know our water's off. And then on the pump, we actually have, it's pretty nice, we have a couple unions here. So we'll unthread these. This is the discharge. This is the inlet. That's it. So now we got disconnected from the plumbing. If you have a union like this, there's a rubber seal on the bottom of here. It goes in the groove. Make sure you don't lose that rubber seal. So now we're disconnected from the plumbing. We'll actually go ahead and disconnect it electrically and then remove it out of the way. Work on this motor electrically, we want to make sure the power's off. So I go into my circuit breaker panel. I turned off this is the waterfall feature pump, that's off, and I also turned off the main pump just in case. So both of these are off, the motor is out, I got no power here. So that's first. The electrical connections are actually inside this housing. So I got a 1/4-inch socket. I backed off, there's two screws, one here, one on the bottom side here. So those are both backed off now. And I loosened up my ground wire here. Ground is off. This cover's loose. There's a slot in the side here that goes around the conduit, and I'll just take a screwdriver and take this cap off. There we go. Now you'll see a lot of corrosion in here. This is just from weather. It's been sitting out here for years through the winters, and this is what happens. So we'll go ahead and start disconnecting this. We'll start here. We got two wires coming in, two blues and a green. Fortunately, these were set up for quick disconnects. So these are 1/4-inch female terminals that go into a male terminal in the motor. This is a 220 motor. If this were 110, one of these would be white, one would be black, hot, and the white is neutral. In this case, it's 220. They're both the same color. So we've got power coming through each wire. Okay, so now that both power is disconnected, we'll take the ground off. Again, 1/4-inch screw here. Now it turns out this is a pretty good tray for small parts. That screw goes in there, that screw goes in there. Okay, so now we're disconnected electrically. What I'll do is take this coupler off. I'll pull my conduit back. That's that. my wires out. Two, three. Okay, there's my 3 wires. Now I'm going to take this fitting off because the new pump's going to not come with this fitting. These are our unions, our half couplers. The new pump will not come with these, so I got to take them off of this pump and put them on new ones. So I just took a pair of channel locks, grab underneath the collar, and thread. These actually came out pretty easily. If these come out hard, don't force it. It's all plastic. You might have to tap a little bit on the side as you're backing this out, but these came out pretty good. So there's one. Take my little basket out, put them in there. And then the second one, this is the inlet. So this is a Hayward 700 series 1.5 horsepower pump. The motor looks a little bit different than the old motor. The pumps are actually identical. The inlets and outlets are in the same location. Just with the new motor, the junction box is on top to keep it out of the weather because it is an outdoor rated motor. First thing I'll do here is tape up these couplers to thread into the new pump. Now when I use Teflon tape on the fittings, that's just to help the fitting go in easier and seal up the threads. There is an O-ring on the face, which is actually a seal. When I turn these fittings to apply the tape, I actually turn the fitting in the direction of rotation, so righty-tighty. If I were to tape this in the other direction as I thread this fitting in, it'll actually start to unwind the tape. So as you see, I'm rotating the fitting to the right as a tightening direction as the tape is going on. So I'll break off that tape and then thread this fitting into the housing. So as I thread this in, the tape is actually getting tighter. If I taped it the opposite direction, it would actually unwind the tape and make a big mess. So let's see, to thread this in by hand most of the way. Then I'll just take a pair of channel locks and snug it up. Again, there is an O-ring on the bottom face of that half joint, which is your actual seal. So here I'm just going to take a pair of channel locks, tighten it up. Again, not too crazy hard. It is plastic. Then I'll do the same thing on the inlet fitting. So you'll see here, there's the actual O-ring that seals on the face of the inlet of the pump. So that make sure that that O-ring is intact whenever you do swap these fittings over. You can see the O-ring there, just a nice rubber O-ring. So again, I'll tape these up and then thread this one in as well. Got the inlet fitting on as well. Just take a pair of channel locks again and snug this up. So a little snug there, a little snug on the outlet. And the next thing we'll do is just check to make sure our plugs are in. So there's 2 plugs in here. One's on the side of the pump. You want to make sure that's in, and as well as the one on the front. Make sure that one's tight. New pump's in place. I got my rubber seal in here. Line it up with my groove. This rubber seal goes on this flat face. Like that. Spread this down. That. You don't have to get crazy with this, just hand tight, and then the same thing on the front. Make sure my rubber seal's in place. Right there. Oops. Okay, that's good and tight. Now that the plumbing's hooked up, the first thing I'm going to do is hook up the ground wire. So on the side of the motor is your ground connection. So I'll take the bare ground wire, loop it into your connector with the green screw, and then clamp down on that. So tighten your green screw against your ground wire, nice and tight, and then tuck it in. So that's done. Then what we'll do is we'll take the cover off the top with these 4 screws, and then that'll expose the junction box and our electrical connections. Now you'll notice on the cover it actually has a wiring diagram. So we're going to wire this up for 230 volts. There actually is a 115 volt option, so they give you 2 jumpers. The blue is for 230 volts. The brown jumper is for the 115. So we're not going to use the 115 in this case. So you'll see in the motor, there's the brown jumper. That is for the 115 volt motor, which this is not. We have a 230 volt motor, so we'll use the blue jumper. So we're not going to use that, we're going to toss it away. Actually, the motor comes pre-configured for 230 volts. There's a blue jumper. Actually says 230 on a little sticker. on the side of that. So that's good to go. So what I'll do now is the first thing, I'll take my conduit elbow, I'll put a little bit of tape on the outside, and then thread that in. Threaded most of this by hand, and the last turn or so I'll just use a pair of channel locks. I don't want to make this too tight because I don't want to crack the aluminum housing. So what I'll just do is put the channel locks on there, rotate it about half a turn until it's pointed in the direction I want it to go, which you'll see here. Then I'll stop. And I can always put a little bit of silicone on the outside of that fitting just to make sure it's weather tight. So now I'll just fish the wires through. Again, the two blues are the power. Fish these through one at a time, and then the green is your ground. So once I get those into the housing, you'll see I have to pull through with a pair of needle nose pliers. Sometimes these are a little bit stubborn, but take a pair of pliers, grab the end of the wire, and then kind of push and pull, and you'll get it through your fitting there. So there's the second power wire, and then the ground wire will be next through. You'll see that poke through here in a second. So there's the ground, and I'll just pull it through. Now all the wires are in. I can pull the rest of the cable through and make sure I got enough slack in there to work with. So I was fortunate, these wires already had terminals on them, so I got a ring terminal for the ground screw and then flat prong terminals for the power wires. So right now I'm just reconnecting the conduit, and I'll tighten this up with a pair of channel locks as well. Make sure that's nice and tight. So I'll tighten up with the channel locks so it's nice and tight. Now you notice these wires already have terminals on them, like I mentioned. If you didn't have terminals on, there are actually two screws on the junction box. See, these have nice flat prong terminals. If those weren't there, you'd actually stick the wire underneath where those two screws were, the bare wire, and then clamp down the screws. Fortunately, the motor also has flat prong terminals. So I take off the two dummy wires, and then I'll connect the flat prong connector right on top of that terminal block. So there's already two terminals there, one for each power wire. There's the second flat prong. So I'll push that on, just like that. And then in the corner, you'll see there's a green ground screw. So now I'm just checking that with a pair of pliers, make sure they're already seated. They are. And now I'll connect the ground. So there's a ground symbol and then the green ground screw. So I'll loosen that and then put my ground wire on. Get started. What I'll do is if I have a hard time starting, I'll actually turn the screw backwards until I feel it just jump a little bit. And then I know I'm lined up my threads. There we go. So we got ground, our two powers, looking good. Our blue jumper's on there, tuck that in. And we are all set here. Here's a rubber seal. This is foam for the capacitor. And on each screw, you got a little seal, a little O-ring on each screw. If your pump didn't have these unions on it, you could always add it. If it's directly plumbed right into the fitting on the pump, you can cut your PVC pipe, glue on some threaded unions like I have here from the pool store, and it makes life a lot easier. And in fact, if you want to conserve the life of your pump in wintertime, once your pool is winterized and put away for the season, you could actually disconnect this, take your pump out, put it inside the garage, put it in your pool house, but keep it out of the weather for the winter. We think what happens a lot of times with these motors, the snow, the ice, just years of weather abuse will actually cause these motors to go bad. So you could take it out during the winter, probably extend the life of your pump. So what we're going to do is we got to prime this pump because it's a water pump, it's not an air pump. If there's no water in it, it's going to suck air and it'll never pump water. So what we're going to do is, if you ever heard the term priming the pump, all you got to do is fill this with water. There we go, perfect. Now, water's full, cover goes in, these little tabs go inwards, like that. up. Okay, valve is in on position. Power's on. There we go. We got water coming in. It's hard to see, but there is definitely water coming in. So there we go. We got our pump replaced. It's flowing real nice. I can hear the water flowing out in the pool. So hopefully you enjoyed the video how to replace a pool pump. This was a 1.5 horsepower Hayward Superpump, but the techniques apply to just about any pool pump you might have. So please like the video, subscribe to my YouTube channel at Kudas Industries, and comment if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.